I'm Katie Atwell, co-host of the EduGals podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to this episode of the High Tech Podcast, brought to you by another not a sponsor, but new experience.
Yeah.
Soundtrap. We don't know what's going to happen here. Could be great.
Yeah, we don't. I'm gonna be honest. We threw this one out. You're like, why are you talking about the app first? Because we just need to preface everything that's about to happen.
Yeah. This could. You might never hear this. We don't know. Like this is gonna be fun.
We'll see.
We're very excited. We are back with episode 71, opening up our learning designers. Well, we're opening up the episode, but we're closing the series.
We're closing. It is quite the opposite of what you were about to advertise.
Well, I was, It's fine.
It happens.
Josh and Will back as always. We are here to jump into some fun conversations and wrap up the Learning Designers React series. Before we do that, of course, as always, find us on Twitter at High Tech Podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, tweet, retweet, post, GIFs, I don't know, all that fun thing.
Do the stuff, yeah.
Email us at inbox@hightechpod.us.
Us is the correct pronunciation, but it's fine.
You can do it my way. You can do Josh's way.
Nope, it's a thing every episode.
It works both ways. They should send us an image at one or either or both of those locations.
Yeah, one of those places.
What should they send us, Josh?
Okay, so let's try this again, because we tried this last episode.
Okay.
And it did not work. I'm going to give you a letter, and you give me an alliterated animal.
Oh, great.
Scenario. Okay, so I'm going to do...
Oh, great.
I'm going to do A.
Let's go. I mean, you have to, an aardvark on an arc.
Okay, yeah.
Aardvark on an arc.
See, that's a solid option. I like that. Yeah. There you go.
Definitely don't do an arc on an aardvark, because that...
Well, that would end up with
murder.
a dead aardvark under an arc. So that would be...
Squish.
Yeah, that would not be great.
Once you've got your colorful, drawings over to us, we'd love that. That's
or black and white, whatever you prefer.
Or just stick figures, frankly.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can manage to communicate
I don't know what a stick figure aardvark would look like, but
now
okay.
I want to see.
I'm curious.
Once you're done with that, head on over to our website, hightechpod.us, where we have all of our episode pages. Every single page is a resource available to you. We hope you can use that to get familiar with the apps like Soundtrap, like all the other ones we've done.
Yeah.
But also share that with other people so they can take advantage of it as well. Is that good? Are we good? Are we open? Is this a real episode now?
I mean, that was what's on the script. So... Look at, except for the aardvark, we didn't plan that part.
That's perfect.
But that really was
an ad-libbed aardvark.
Oh yeah, it was an ad-libbed aardvark under an arc. It happened. I said that quite quick. I'm proud of myself.
You nailed it. I love it. Stuck the landing. So episode 3 in the series here on Learning Designers React. We got folks involved with the last two. It was great to go over some content, but this week's just us. We're gonna get into what are we gonna get into?
We are gonna talk about today. So Will and I kind of debriefed and shared some LinkedIn learning experiences. Now our podcast is very focused on higher ed, but we're slowly being corrupted by Will's corporateness.
Well, yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much. But also, a lot of people do LinkedIn learning, and I think there's a lot we in higher ed can also learn from other learning designers in other areas, corporate being a place that's done, and obviously there's more that's done in LinkedIn learning than just corporate learning, but that's very much what happens in LinkedIn learning. I mean, so if you're not familiar with LinkedIn, first of all, hey, we've talked about it. So go check that episode out. That I'm certainly not buying time until I figure out which episode number
I was trying to look too, and I was like,
67! I knew that off the top of my head immediately.
Wow. Golf
Yeah,
clap. Golf
so
clap.
nailed it. We actually talked about that. We got some synergy going on in the recent episodes. We I use
Amateur hour.
Yeah, a hot button word. Or whatever. I don't know. Topics, things. So we talked about LinkedIn. So it's fully explained there, as if you don't already know what it is. But if you've never done LinkedIn Learning, I will say I think this is more common, right? Because you do have to pay for it.
Yeah. I don't think there's any free version. I really don't.
No.
Maybe like you can watch a video, like one.
You can
video
probably
for
do
free,
like a
but-
basic one. Yeah. So I mean, LinkedIn has for a while had this like learning section to their platform, and you can subscribe to it in LinkedIn. Like you could pay for it monthly. I got it briefly through work. Then I liked it enough that I just like kept it. Like I mean, work's still not paying for it stealthily. But
Nice
that would
try.
be great.
No,
Yeah.
yeah.
They're like, donuts
You're
every
actually
day.
paying for it yourself.
Yeah, so I pay for LinkedIn Learning myself. So I mean, a lot of them are like they have different types of things in LinkedIn, right? So I mean, you got like the just general little courses, which are much more like certification courses, or like if you want to just better yourself in something. I know you've
Right.
taken like one we're going to talk about today is one you've done on Excel, and the profs or faculty listening to our course are like, "Ooh, I'm so psyched! Excel courses."
I met
work-
a
work with us.
professor that wasn't like accounting or something who did
Yeah.
love Excel.
Oh, really?
so, but-
Okay. Well, that's a win.
One.
And I've done a handful of things like user. That's where I've gotten like some of my user experience training. If you haven't already gotten that, I'm super into project management, so I've done some like project management courses through LinkedIn Learning.
Josh is a nerd.
Yep. And so it connects. Anyway, so you can do all that stuff. Short 2 seconds, and then Will, you give that too. I really like LinkedIn Learning because there's just so much stuff there. Like there's a lot of different topics and things and stuff that like I don't want a whole degree in this topic, but I want to like better myself in it, and LinkedIn Learning has stuff like that. So
Yeah.
and then also it can connect to your profile, so it's cool. It shows like you've done some stuff, and I've even done programs in LinkedIn Learning that have like multiple courses and a learning path that you go through.
You're doing this
so-
to prep for the PMP, right? The project manager's
Yes.
certification.
Yeah, so I'm going because I'm a nerd. I'm hoping within the next year or so to get my project management certification in agile project management.
Yeah.
Because I don't like the other ones. So and they, even though I have some stuff and I could probably start to prepare for it, LinkedIn has a distinct learning path that they've designed for people who are getting ready to take that test. It's a pretty
Right.
large test. So they have a distinct path of courses that you can take. That's not even like in direct partnership with that. They just like made it. Like somebody made that pathway in LinkedIn to help prep.
Right,
And it's
right, right.
specifically designed for that. So yeah, I'll be doing that in the fall here in the next
Nice.
couple months.
Yeah. So on my side, I've used it for everything from like speech techniques to leadership development to Excel, HTML. Like, we use it at my company for sales development, like salespeople, sales negotiation tactics, how to speak, persuasion, tools like that. You can also probably just get like, I don't know, how to water your garden. I'm not sure if it goes into some of the less businessy things, but it's really good and it's really wide in that space. I specifically liked my my HTML Essentials course. Like I've been using HTML for years in different capacities, but it was so great to just go through a whole course, start to finish, that was like trying to walk me through different elements of HTML and make sure I knew it, in a less organic way, like a very constructed, like do this, do that, do this, do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's awesome. It really fits the bill for all that. As it goes by Learning Designers React, we are going to kind of ethereally react to two different courses. Josh took one, I took one. We've got those in mind of what we want, but we kind of want to hit some of the highlights, lowlights of what it is to do a LinkedIn Learning course, right? There's a lot of we do both believe, I think there's a lot of good things in it, but maybe not bad things, just opportunities. Like, oh, if only they could do this too, it would be tons better.
So let's just jump in that way. And I think the way I want to kick this off, Will, is like just talking about it at first as somebody who's like just came into it, right? So it's like if I'm looking at when I just entered into a LinkedIn Learning course, because here's the deal: Will and I have both two courses, but they're totally similar. to what we're talking about. Like I have one that's on Agile Foundations I sent to you, and you've been showing me one that you did on Excel. Like, and they're basically the same concept of a course.
Right.
And I will say that. So like one of the things with LinkedIn, take it or leave it, they are very consistent in their design of their courses. I think
uniform
overall.
even.
Like very uniform. And no matter where it's coming from. Now, there's some negatives to that, I think, in certain areas. But I think overall, I am still somebody who stands strong on the soapbox that consistency in online learning is super important. And yes, different topics require different things and different stuff. But overall, the structure, like the interface of your course and the way things are kind of placed, I think should be consistent because it helps students, the site and the environment not become a hurdle to the actual learning. And so I think they do that well. I think they try to make their courses kind of a general format. And another just like user thing that I love about it is they have immediately on the side like a contents bar, kind of like an outline of the course that you can click through and use, and it shows you, it visually displays your progress, right? So like that's a huge win in my opinion. They try to display the progress that you've made through there.
They're trying to keep you aware of your learning as you're going, give you notes, opportunities, anything like that. I was actually just working on some LinkedIn Learning stuff today for my job, and I literally just like opened the video, copied down the outline from the table of contents on the left, and then used that as my notes. You know, like I would write things under each. Like that's so easy. To the point of consistency, though, like I like that you're pointing that out, and we were even joking about the fact that we see it in the videos, like even how people like stand in the videos and where they are and like what the backgrounds they use are. It is a classic LinkedIn Learning scene to be looking at the main speaker from like a foot above their head, and they're like hands together looking up at the camera. I have seen that in so many LinkedIn Learning videos. Like they have a stance. It's like LinkedIn Learning Pro stance, and they have to like hands together, look up at the camera. I'm not talking like mine's right now. It's on the top of my monitor. That's a little up. Like I'm talking like a foot above their head. They're like they're looking at Ben Roethlisberger or something, some huge quarterback from or basketball player. I don't even know. Sports. Is that a good? Is that a sports reference?
Sports ball. Yeah. No, like it's hilarious because you talk about that, and I have a video paused at the beginning of the first video, and he has his hands together and he's staring up. Like it's literally you're describing the exact video, and this is not a course that Will took. Like so you've seen it. Yeah. So they have like kind of a universal video thing, which there's positives and negatives to that. I still hold by the fact that there's a lot more research to say like overproduced videos didn't really matter.
Right.
So, but again, they're going for a certain thing, and I think that works
now
for what they're doing.
Something to point out though, and like I'm thinking through at least like we started on some of the video content, so I want to stay in that range for a little bit. Like your Agile Foundations course, I think it's actually pretty cool that it's primarily the main speaker, but then there's some scenes where they're like looking at this group of folks dealing with like this cards. I don't know what the relevance is of the content, right? But they do try, and I know that with like my Excel courses, they try to like make sure that it's not just you looking at the speaker for 30 minutes, right? They break it up with relevant content. In the Excel, courses, there's almost always like maybe 20 seconds, 30 seconds where you're looking at Oz and he's saying something, he's making it cool, he's making it relevant, and then it switches to a screen share where you're seeing Excel on the screen and he's doing something on Excel. You know what I mean? Like that's in situation, that's relevant. That makes sense. With your Agile Foundations, it's like doing whatever this role play is to give you the relevance of that. Like, boom. I think that's a good use of video. Man, it's a little bit of production to get that kind of stuff done, but it works. It's effective.
Absolutely. So that would be one thing that I say, like just in general, corporate training does a little bit better. And definitely LinkedIn Learning tries to do because they're so, and that's the other thing we'll mention here. In all of my experience with LinkedIn Learning is video heavy. In fact, it's just basically video. And we'll talk about that in a second. There's a negative to that. But one thing that they do well with the videos is all their videos are super short.
Yes.
I think like looking at the stuff that you were doing and the stuff that I have, it's like barely do they cross 4 minutes. I mean, some do. It just depends.
Yeah, I wasn't even aware of that. Like, I kind of knew that implicitly, but now you say that, I'm like, holy crap, you're right.
They're all like very consistent time counts. And the other thing that they do, to what you're mentioning, Will, is they do something that's really important in video that I think we miss sometimes, which is like a video production thing, but it's also good to learning. Like, we know that if somebody is just in a video speaking for even just 5 minutes straight to the video, you're going to struggle with attention span for people. Because it's also not like in a classroom where I see you walking around and you're talking and you're engaging with me. It's a little bit different. Like, it's a video, it's a little bit further removed. And so we've learned that good learning design also takes into account, well, hey, if this prof is talking about, I don't know, is talking about this thing in Excel, or they're talking about people and meeting, they're talking about a, social work meeting, or they're talking about, a math equation or whatever it may be, that it's important to also show that on the screen. And so they take a moment to kind of break out while the person's still talking to show a scene that matches what they're talking about, right? And so that may be a slide, that maybe in this case it was a simulation of people sitting around a table, which is a agile project management little card game thing that you play, which I don't do because I think it's a little dumb. They show that stuff, right? And so like your point, they're talking about Excel, so at times they're showing Excel. Now, if I picked up correctly in the course, they're not showing Excel the whole time, though. He's talking sometimes, right?
Yep.
So there's kind of a reverse they did there. One of the tough parts when you're doing training or things like that, which we could learn more in professional development, for faculty, like I'm talking about people in our roles who do
higher
that
ed
type of stuff, is to not just make the video somebody clicking through the whole tool the entire time. They purposely made the person show up and showed them, and that also creates a better connection. So anyway, it's this what we'll often call, it means a little bit of a different thing, but I think fits here, is like this differentiated learning that applies to just video too. Like not just doing video versus something else. It actually applies to also doing different things in your video.
Right.
Not making 100 videos that are all you standing in front of the same background consistently. Like that's
no faculty wouldn't do that. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, that never happens. So I think they do that well in LinkedIn Learning. Like my first react to our two courses would be, that's a huge positive. They went out of their way to make differentiated videos to try to pull people in. And I remember going through the course, that kept me on my toes for checking things. That kept, when he was making a point or giving a definition, you better be sure a decent sized slide popped up that was not cluttered.
Yep.
That was just a colored background with
like a 1, 2, 3 or nothing else.
Yeah,
on it.
or whatever. Yeah, and so it was always showing me that stuff, and it helped break up the video. It also helped the videos be a lot more useful.
Yeah. On the video content, experience itself, I'll just like roll in their captions. Every video I've ever seen in LinkedIn Learning is captioned, and it's good. The captioning is good. I think that's another element where they're being multimodal. Wow. Multimodal. Just like botched that word completely. Sorry. But the differentiated learning, like there's they're reaching, and not only is it captioned, it's also transcripted. So you could you can open up the transcript and like click on a word, and it'll take you to that point in the video. And as you play the video or something like that, it like highlights each word as it goes.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of, I think, good skills or good even accessibility things in play with their videos that just work. Like I'm not saying that these things are going to change the world, but they are effective.
They are effective. I mean, the transcript thing is huge. I used that a couple times while I was going through, because I will say, like, one disadvantage, they keep it down pretty well. But man, in my course, like, he moved sometimes. Like, he just like was flying through things. And so it was really helpful to have those transcripts to be able to click through, and I could actually jump to sections of the video, like you said. Now, I understand everybody listening to this, you're not always in complete control of that happening. So that's okay. But if you can figure out a way for that to come in, or there's plenty of tools we've talked about, Otter AI, or some other tools, or one that we're testing right now is also one that does this. There are plenty of tools that do that. So I think that's great. Now, I want to talk about there's always double-edged sword, right, Will?
Yep.
Of the negative of the video content. I know why LinkedIn does it. Okay. But it's like all their courses are just all video. Like that's literally what it is. There's nothing else. I mean, they have exercise documents, but man, does the quality of that vary from course to course.
Oh my gosh.
Like Will's was like actual exercise files.
Right.
So these are files that they give you that you can practice.
Yeah, so it's Excel, they're spreadsheets, and it's like got preloaded variables and preloaded formulas, and you can check your work in it, and like it's a whole thing, right?
Yes. Mine was on Agile project management. What exercise files do you give me?
Was it a printout of the card game so you could make your own?
No, it wasn't even that. It was just it was just like notes, basically. I mean, that's what it was.
Here's
it was
an
like the
outline.
definitions of things. I'm gonna be honest, I barely even noticed they were there when I was going through the course. So that would be my one big criticism of LinkedIn Learning. It's all video. And like video is great, don't get me wrong. There's a reason video is becoming popular, but there's still a strong principle to the fact that if you really want people to learn, they're not going to learn by just watching endless video.
Well,
It's just the reality.
there's a certain element to the platform too that they could really, it would be a big innovation, but they could really improve.
Yeah.
You know, when I'm watching these Excel videos, it's like video 1, video 2, video 3, maybe a quiz, and then it's like, stop, go ahead and use exercise files 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and practice yourself. This is the 21st century. Why can't I just do that in LinkedIn Learning right there? Like, the fact that I have to stop and go and do something else, and I need to have Excel, or I have to have Google Sheets and load it and all this kind of stuff, is like, that's really separating me from the direct instruction to the actual activity.
Yeah. Now, can I ask a question? I didn't pick this up. We were talking about it or looking at it. Did yours actually prompt you to use the exercise files?
Yeah.
Okay. See, mine didn't.
Oh, good.
Okay. So that was going to be my other criticism. There wasn't, at least in mine, there was zero integration of the exercise files. That's why I didn't even know they were there until I got to like module 2.
Yeah, I mean, ours would be like, hey, you know, here's how to run a sum formula on an entire column. Okay, it's very simple, but now go and do it. And it'll be like, go use spreadsheet 1.1 for activity 1.1, and it's on tab blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, tab A has the practice area and tab B has the answers if you struggle. There's always like a little explanation and even
So
a blurb on
answers.
screen to give you that direction.
Yeah. Now,
I like that for Excel. It's good.
Yeah, no, that was good. But here's the thing. That's good, but my criticism would be, and I get it, okay? This is not just burning LinkedIn Learning. LinkedIn Learning has a certain limitation to what they're trying to do.
Right.
But we're looking at it from a learning design perspective. If I was going to design a course that wanted to teach people how to do Excel, it would also be helpful to think through what we talk about all the time, which is like feedback loops, okay? So like thinking through how can I create a system that also gives good quality feedback when they're trying to do things. So in this example of your Excel, they did try to get closer, and it's not bad. Like they did quizzes, they gave you these practice exercises, and they said in these practice exercises, here are the answers. Test yourself against the answers. But a better way would be, and like you said, we're in a new century. I know this is possible. It would take revolutionizing their platform, but you can build quizzes that allow people to type in formulas and could give back prompts of what they've done wrong.
Yeah.
Not just here are the answers, but here's specifically where you're tripping up.
You added a space where you shouldn't have it, or you dropped a parentheses, or you used sum instead of, you know, percentage or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it can give that kind of feedback, and we have the tools to do it.
Yeah,
they
exactly.
exist.
Yeah. Now, I understand while in Agile Project Management, it's a little harder. Like, what are you going to make my exercise things? Like, but to your point, there was a place that they didn't do this. They gave these cards that you could talk about. Like, hey, I would have made some type of exercise in there. I know it would have been a little harder, but say, hey, download these cards and try this scenario with 2 other people, right? And tell us how it goes.
That's a real exercise. Like, that was what you would do in a classroom.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's something that I think could have been helpful. So I think that's a big weakness in the certification courses too. Sure. A lot of them try to build them where they're like, the student can go through the course without anybody facilitating it, because it's a lot of money to have somebody facilitate it. So we want to build kind of a self-paced course that they can go through by themselves. But feedback becomes a lot harder. And we know how powerful real person feedback is.
Yeah,
to
well,
people and how that can develop someone into whatever you're working to develop them into.
They use the quizzes as the milestones as you go, and the quizzes
Yeah.
do have some feedback. I mean,
That's true.
It's very basic. Like if it's an A, B, C, D question, and I picked B, but the answer was C, it says no, that's incorrect. You know, if you remember from video blah blah blah, like it gives you that. So they took that step, which is even better than a lot of faculty's quizzes I've seen. But
That's true. Yeah.
You know, once you hit the correct one, it does say correct, and this is from blah 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 video where we mentioned Like
that's
it does
true.
put it in
Yeah.
context, which is good. But there's nothing like that's question by question, that's quiz by quiz. There's nothing that kind of brings it all together. There's like a faculty member, a human would give you that space to say like, all right, so you've seen these 10 questions. This is what we need to take out of all this, or this is how it applies to this week's materials, or like there's a way to connect that to the real world that I think is much richer. But they do that because they can then self-deliver those certificates and people can put it on their LinkedIn profiles quickly, easily.
I think there's a reason LinkedIn's like this. I'm taking a look at it from the learning designer side of saying like there are your weaknesses in if you I guess some people I think come to these LinkedIn learning courses and they're like, I'm gonna do all these things, I'm gonna master all these skills, and it's like, no. I think a lot of the LinkedIn courses are like, if we're even talking taxonomy ideas from our episode with Robin and the upcoming series of that we've dubbed the Robin
S. Jeffers
S. Jeffers
learning taxonomies
series or whatever we want to call. We're only getting to a certain depth in learning and what we're doing. Like there is I think we're still lacking something. In a lot of these, just because of the dynamic of where we're going. Now, I will say, point to LinkedIn. I forgot about that in the quizzes, because mine did that too. In the quizzes, it would, even if I got it wrong, it would tell me where in the video it was and would tell me to go back and look at the video.
Right.
That is superb. Like, if we could start doing that in more higher ed courses, that's not hard. They have feedback options in Canvas and other LMSs. And all I have to do is hyperlink back to the content or the lesson that it was in.
Right.
Like, that's not that hard. And that was super good. So yeah, I think let's see what's on our little
and for me
list.
I think that the biggest thing that they could see some improvement on, like all these things, maybe there's a little positive, a little negative. I honestly like it in general. Where we definitely need to see improvement is in the social learning space. LinkedIn Learning only recently in the last couple of years released like a Q&A and a forum experience. So every LinkedIn Learning course has a Q&A space, and you can ask a follow-up question or extension question, but it's completely, in a good way, it's completely community driven. There's not necessarily an instructor who's going to go back through and answer questions directly. Maybe some do, I don't know, but the ones I've participated in, I've never seen the instructor in. And because it's crowdsourced, because it's not instructor managed, there can be some faulty information. There can be some good information, but that's it. Like, it's a very one-for-one environment. Like, I ask a question, you answer it. If somebody else thinks they didn't answer it well enough, they might offer a few cents extra, but it's not co-constructing learning. It's not trying to do it together. It's it's not real feedback. Like, it still is missing the mark on what social learning can be. It's better than nothing. I do like the Q&A feature. I would just love to see them take that further. I think there's more opportunity in that space.
Yeah, they're not leveraging other students and their experiences with each other to help create. I think there's no requirement in these courses to actually create something, to make something as a result, and so you lose kind of that big project idea of what you're doing. I absolutely agree. Now, again, I think that's LinkedIn Learning's in a tough spot. They're basically trying to provide stuff, so we're not like criticizing LinkedIn Learning in general, but I think we can learn, because I will say this, we have people in higher ed who are like, oh, we should just move to what they're doing there.
Yeah,
right? Like,
let's just do LinkedIn Learning.
Like, let's do LinkedIn Learning. And you hear people say this because they'll be like, oh, it'd be cheaper. We'll do this. It'd be great. But, like, significant learning, to use some little thinks from our taxonomy conversation, is not happening at a high level in all of these courses.
Right.
And there's a good reason for that. And this should help those faculty who are listening. We can't automate the instructor. Okay, we can't self-pace a course, and good learning design takes into account that somebody needs to be there to help guide the students along the learning path, to help push them where they need pushed, to help engage them together the way they need to engage together, to help lead that learning experience for real in-depth learning to happen. And I think that's important. And my little hot take and plug is that if we really, I think you and I were talking about this before, if we really want to see good learning happen through these areas, we need to start to also acknowledge that, like, okay, if we're going to get better at jobs and our skills, like the apprenticeship model is a real thing and should stick around. Like, maybe there's a way to pair what's happening in LinkedIn Learning to say, well, yeah, but why don't you do this? But you're also gonna, you're gonna be a part of this thing, or you're gonna be doing this thing at your work to help engage and learn it. Because at the end of the day, that you have to jump into that doing step.
Yeah.
Especially for a lot of these skills-based stuff that LinkedIn Learning will do to actually do it. I didn't get better at project management until I had to manage a project. And some of that stuff.
I'm preparing to like do some technical skills development for myself, like learning APIs, how APIs work, how to write them, and a bunch of stuff around that. And there's a course on LinkedIn Learning, like writing APIs, right? And it might be 3 hours long, and I could take that course and suddenly I know how to write APIs, right? Like, no, it's not enough. Like, I have gone through and like sifted through as many of their courses on APIs as possible, and I curated a little collection of like 6 or 7 courses on APIs, and altogether it might be up to 15 or 20 hours of instruction, and I'm committing to that as a professional development goal, to go through all of them, because like one of these courses might give me good information, but when it's done, it's done. Like, there's not necessarily continuity. I'm not going to take that skill and try and make it better or stretch it or use it a different way, right? But if I do a series of these courses, each one might pull back to something else. They might have some redundant information. They're not all done by one publisher or one instructor. But the benefit of that for me is I'll be able to continue doing this over time. Whereas most LinkedIn Learning courses, you get there and you do the hour, 2 hours, 3 hours of content, and you're done. There's no requirement that you continue working on it, or that you get with someone who's an expert in doing it and get their feet. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's the point of your apprenticeship idea, and that's, like, to me, the continuity of instruction. Just doing it once, it's just like Duolingo. If I do one lesson of Duolingo, I don't speak Spanish. You can't even do 150 lessons of Duolingo and say you speak Spanish. Like, you need to take that further and go speak with someone who speaks Spanish, and then you'll know if you can speak it. So I might be getting a little engaged or heated about this. It's not a criticism. LinkedIn Learning does what it does really well, which I believe is introduce people to content, get them in the door.
Give them some of the base knowledge and things they need to start to practice and do more and just develop as you're working. I mean, that's what really LinkedIn Learning at its core started to be, is we're trying to create kind of a place that people can pick up base knowledge and skills to try to get further and do more stuff in their job and their situations. And it's absolutely helped me. I mean, I've gotten stuff with project management, will continue to get it, that is helping me at work. But the key is that I'm doing it in pair with a job that allows me to try doing those things and working on those things. And so, I think at the end of the day, the reason we wanted to talk about this is we're coming at the end of this mini series that we're going to probably bring back in the future in a bigger way when we have more time and resources. Is that the end of the day? Yes. Okay. The last couple episodes taught us about, like, we want to, break out, scaffold things well. We want to bring consistency. I think in our episode with Susanna, that was a lot of what we were talking about, is like clarity and consistency in what we're doing, thinking of the student in the way we design it. But it's not all the interface. It's not all that too. It's not all making the right videos and doing all that stuff. You still need the human element and the instructor. It's those things coming together that can create a good online learning experience or a hybrid learning experience. And that's really what we as designers and faculty should be aiming for, is looking at all of those areas and trying to do them well. And that's why I think the best way to design online courses is a partnership between faculty members and designers. Because the faculty members can consider the human element, what they're going to do, the content element, and the designer can consider, how am I going to make this so that the interface, the stuff that we're creating, the sequence of the learning doesn't get in the way of the instructor and what they're trying to do.
In one of the swiftest and most beautiful metaphors I could make, we take all of these courses, all these episodes, the last 3 episodes, and these insights on all these different elements of courses to say, if we want to bring together the perfect Captain Planet, we need heart, wind, water, fire, and earth. Like, you just need them all. You need all 5, and when they combine, Captain Planet, he's our hero. That's all it takes, folks.
Wow, that was a beautiful turnaround right there. You brought that around.
Together. That's the metaphor for learning. We need all 5. If somebody's not feeling it, if heart is not in it that day, we're not getting Captain Planet out of this. We need both and.
You need both and. That is a beautiful, beautiful way to put it. Nice work.
Well, that was a little bit of a trap, though, because I was just looking for a nice out on the conversation to transition us to our app.
Yeah.
Our app that is in progress. This is a first ever with the High Tech Podcast.
Yeah.
I don't think we've done anything like this before.
No, we haven't done this. Like, listen, here's the deal, folks. We're not going to pretend that you think we've used every single app that we talk about in a lot of detail. If that was
Josh,
if that was the case, we would not have nearly as many apps that we talk about. But we've talked about plenty of apps that we've used a ton. And would stand fully behind. And we've talked about a handful of apps that we've tried out, tested, and we like the concept, and we think they meet a need. And even some apps that we've talked about in this episode or this podcast we didn't know as well in the beginning, and we've come to love them. Like IRAD is a good example of that. We talked about that.
Oh my gosh,
we knew a little bit about IRAD, and I freaking love IRAD now.
I use it every day at work.
Yeah, exactly. And there's been other tools I picked up. Otter, I didn't know much about, and you didn't know much about when we talked about it, and I love Otter now. I mean, Otter.ai is something I use all the time.
Hashtag not a sponsor. None of them are sponsors.
Exactly. So
come be a sponsor.
The tool we're talking about today is called Soundtrap. And this is one that I didn't actually take time to find out how the heck we found out about this. Is this
Casey?
Casey told you about this?
Yes. Okay. Famous sister-in-law Casey, formerly on the podcast. Yes, she told me about this one.
Okay, cool. Did she use it in a context? Man, we should talk about this beforehand.
Previously, they had used it at her former employer that's no longer in existence.
Okay, cool. So, anyway, she talked to you about this app. So we didn't really use it much. And so Will and I were like, we're going to play around with this, see if this could be one of the apps that we talk about. And at face value, I love Soundtrap. So, like, let's talk about what Soundtrap is. I mean, Soundtrap's essentially, I think the best way to put it would be a collaborative, cloud-based audio recording tool. Okay?
Right. Intending from the front to be, like, maybe music-driven, but we are recording the podcast in it right now.
Yeah. They do podcast stuff. Like right now, Will and I, we have a webcam. We're not even using Zoom or anything we do, which you're like, we're really pulling back the curtain. They're like, wait, you're not in the same room?
Dun, dun,
you monsters. Yeah, no, we're not due to dynamics. Not because we live far away from each other. We're super close to each other. Like my wife is in your house right now.
Sam and Marissa are downstairs eating popcorn, and it smells really good, and I really wish I could have some.
So we just do it for simplicity in the way we record the podcast right now. So, so we're talking on a webcam where we have a chat system, and right now it's recording both of our audio files separately in different tracks that we could easily mix or listen to, share, comment on, do a bunch of cool stuff with, and you could export all of that out of there. The other stuff that it has is like you can bring in guests, you can add multiple tracks, layers, loops. Have like a drum machine in it. I mean, there's some cool stuff.
We're using it right now for podcasting, but like if you were using it on music, the idea might be that instead of us podcasting and recording ourselves right now, we could be like talking, collaborating while we work on the tracks, while we lay the beat, while we bring in sound effects, while we like. It's pretty awesome. It's in that way meant to be a collaborative sound making experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Without having to send files back and forth consistently.
Bingo.
Which is really cool. And so I think it has two really good like uses that I'd like to see how it could handle it. One being just like if you're one of the difficulties a lot of people had to work through going remote, and even still today is like how do I teach online music classes? Like especially where they have to especially like composition classes, like things like that. And we provided other tools in the past that could talk about that. But this one would be really useful for just like literally they could live like digitally from different places across the country, record audio tracks together, listen to them together, mix them together, not even, it doesn't have to be even at the same time. Like they could separately record. Like Will and I were working on stuff, and Will was like, for all his trumpet skills, wanted to record his trumpet. I don't know why I picked that as your instrument, and I wanted to lay down a sweet drum track. He could
Why
lay
did
down.
you pick that as your instrument? I don't get
because
it.
I actually play that.
Okay.
So air guitar, I don't know. Whatever you want. Let's go with slapping the bass. Okay. So you're playing the bass. Let's say I need. And here's what I really like about this. So I've done studio recordings, right? So, this was only a slight humble brag. It's fine.
I was gonna let it slide, bro, but you know.
So I've recorded in studios, and a lot of times what you're doing is right. Like I'm gonna record my drum track, but my guitarist would play the guitar first. They get that track laid down. They'd play that track to me through my headphones. I'd record the drums. It's very rare that people are doing like full room recordings anymore.
Right.
Because it's harder to mix it and harder to do it. Although somebody's going to listen to this and be annoyed at me. They're going to be like, that's how we did it. Okay, cool. So
good for you.
But you could do this with this tool. Like Will could lay down a bass track, throw it in here. There's a little sync button. Sync over that bass track. I could come into here, record in a drum track in here, and sync that right over, and all of a sudden we've got a mix that we can start working with. And like you could do that with your students, and they don't even have to be in the same place. They can do it separately. It's a cool collaborative tool. That's one way I see this happening really well.
And to extend that a little bit, Josh, like the functionality wise, we can pick which microphones we're using while we're doing this stuff. So Josh and I are communicating with one of our microphones, but if I was trying to record my guitar and I had that plugged into my computer, I could just record that while Josh and I could still talk. So the track would only have the guitar being played into it, but Josh and I could actually talk and discuss it while we're doing it.
Yeah. So that's what's really cool. They do just like any of you, and that's why I was really impressed when I looked at it right away. It works very much like a mixing software where I can put separate tracks in, connect those tracks to separate inputs, record them, but it does it in a cloud-based system that allows us to collaboratively work together, share the content, export it. It's cool. It's a pretty cool concept for doing that. So that would be definitely one idea I'd be thinking through. And then also just like in general, kind of like composition stuff. If people wanted to work together to kind of a group project on composing something, like this would be a really cool way to do that as well.
A quick point on composing and like the kind of broader high-tech meta-narrative here. We did talk about a tool called Flat in episode 26, and Flat was literally like music composition. That's explicitly what it did. I saw something here that this integrates. Like you can send your track from Soundtrap over to Flat, and you could do like the music notation and stuff like that in that platform. It has another one that I wasn't familiar with, but like it's so cool to me. They want you to like record, mix, produce in this platform, but also connect to other platforms if you're trying to do like learning things. Like there's no music notes in this platform that I've seen anywhere, but Flat has that. So here, we'll send it over there, and you could do that side of your lesson in another platform if you're doing music education for that context.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing I think this could work really well for is this does work well as like now I will say this. The commenting features so far that Will and I have tested
it's hit or miss.
Been interesting. I think we're still learning. So I would like to argue it's also partially user error. I'm not sure we understand
more than
how it's
likely
supposed to work.
User error.
Yes, because they're a fairly big tool. It would surprise me if they didn't have this nailed down. So they do have a commenting feature that you can comment at different timestamps in the recording on different tracks.
Literally second by second, you can make a comment.
So
like,
I think this would be really great as a feedback tool too, because you could put this in. You could get it shared, the project to you as the instructor, and you could give direct feedback at the different tracks, like the trumpet line or the. I don't know why I keep coming back to trumpet. Maybe I'm really feeling some ska music right now.
I got nothing, dude.
You can give that comment to that section or whatever, or that mixing that they've done on that. So like, there's a lot of cool features. It's obviously not as like powerful as big name mixing softwares and tools. But it'd be a cool tool for doing collaborative stuff.
Yeah.
Now here's our warning. that we will, and actually, what I think we should do is we'll see what happens on this episode, and we might come back and give just an update at the end of the episode of what actually happened. So Will and I tried recording one of our last episodes content through this, and luckily we were smart and we did a backup through our normal way.
Always do a backup.
And Will hit done, and it froze and said 0% processing, and then lost the entire recording.
It just
and
failed.
It was only 10 minutes. Now we still don't know if Will has a fun
See, I actually
browser?
have an update already because we're gonna see. It might
Wait,
work,
really?
but- No. So we're recording right now. We're doing a backup again because we don't want to lose the episodes. And I literally have a flag on screen saying you're still recording. To avoid losing material, we recommend you stop and save your work when recording more than 15 minutes. So we might even lose all of this in Soundtrap.
Okay, so
Oops.
that could be
We're not going to lose the episode because we have our backup. But the point
Yes.
to Soundtrap there, if they're making that point, is they're not trying to, and this is a little weird to me that they would purport themselves to be a podcast episode where podcasts are usually a long form audio tool. But I think that their idea behind this would be like you should be recording clips and splicing it together to make a podcast. I appreciate that sentiment, Soundtrap, but that's how very few podcasts are created,
That's
in my
true.
opinion.
Now, I guess
So-
I could see that with music, like your song tracks usually are shorter.
Right.
So
Right.
this could work well for that. Maybe that's the problem.
But you could. I wouldn't. I'm still not saying that this is a dead in the water for podcasts because
Yeah.
if you're doing like students or like a student activity, maybe you don't want them to be doing a full hour anyways. Like you have
Yeah.
them do mini podcasts, 10 minutes,
could be
15
some
minutes.
stuff.
It could be fine.
That's
but like
true.
if you and I, Josh, here's a thought, recorded an intro and then recorded the conversation and then recorded the app and then recorded the outro, like we could splice our episodes up. But that's not our style.
But
so
yeah,
it's
that's not how we do
So
things.
we'll see. We'll put it in like the
Yeah.
the episode page or something if this worked or not.
So this is our stamp of maybe, okay? And but I do think if it does have to do with recording length, this still could work well for music stuff. Because I think
Right.
you're going to get into a situation where you're creating more smaller tracks that you're mixing together. So I think it's worth a try. I think what it provides is something I don't see in a lot of other tools that could really you and I talk about this all the time. We know we're going to like that an app is cool, not just cool, but is useful and helpful. If I look at it and within 5 seconds I can think of 6 or 7 different solutions.
right.
We felt that way about Math Whiteboard way back in the early days
Love
of the
that
podcast. We felt that way about Notion, about Miro, about some tools, and this tool has potential for me to be like, I have immediately 6 or 7 different things I could try doing with this in online courses. And so that's what psychs me up about this. So I think it's worth checking out, and we will give you an update depending on what happens. Be on the lookout.
Crossing our fingers.
Yeah, with that said, that is our episode. Wow, that was the worst transition ever.
Golf clap, golf
anyway,
clap.
yeah, golf
Slow
clap.
golf
Nailed
clap.
it. We're doing great. I'm like Soundtrap. I fall apart in about 15 minutes. So anyway, next episode, we're super excited. We are going to be kicking off a new series. Like, guys, you just ended one. I know, it's crazy. So we're going to be
We love it here.
we're going to be kicking off as we come to term it, the Robin S. Jeffers
Learning taxonomies
Learning
series.
Taxonomy series.
RSJLTS.
Yes, be on the lookout. I may hide a small picture of Robin somewhere on the image branding for the series. I
love it.
So this is just Robin's series inspired Will and I to talk more about taxonomy. So we're going to be doing an episode on each of the taxonomies that we're aware of or care to talk about. If your taxonomy is not involved, it's not that we don't love it. It's that we either don't know what it is or
We don't love it.
we don't love it. So next week we're going to be kicking off that series by talking about the one that everybody and their mom knows about, Bloom's taxonomy. We're going to break that down a little bit more, and we are going to talk about untools.co, which is funny because I just realized I don't think we planned a tool out for that episode, and you just typed that in now, didn't you?
100%.
Commitment. We do know what this one is. We've looked at it more and super excited to actually talk about that. That's one that needs to come up. So, again, check us out on Twitter at High Tech Podcast. Email us at inbox@hightechpod.us, or you can find us at our website, hightechpod.us as well. We are there. We are on the internet and the web sphere. So check us out. Thank you again for joining us another week as we continue, maybe, to learn what it looks like to harness technology in the classroom, whether online or in person or on our computers while recording the podcast. See ya.
See ya. Well, it worked.
Yeah. Check that out. We got audio files.
Success.
Success. Nailed it. That's it. We just want to let you know. I know you were on the edge of your seat wondering, will it work? Will it not? Soundtrap worked this time. We will continue testing, and that's it. We've never done this before, so goodbye.
.us